Imagine making decisions without knowing who you are in society. Would your choices be fair and just? Welcome to the realm of the veil of ignorance, a thought experiment designed to eliminate personal bias when making decisions. This intriguing concept was proposed by philosopher John Rawls, who believed that if people were stripped of their societal identities, they'd make choices that are fair and just. Rawls posited that in this state of ignorance about our own lives, we would naturally seek to minimize harm and maximize benefit for all, thereby creating a more equitable society. It's a radical idea that challenges us to consider decisions not from our own perspective, but from an unbiased standpoint. This concept, fascinating as it is, prompts us to ask ourselves, would we make the same choices if we were ignorant of our societal positions? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the veil of ignorance. Before we delve deeper, let's understand what the veil of ignorance really is. Imagine you're about to play a game of Monopoly, but before you start, you're blindfolded and asked to set the rules. You don't know whether you'll be the top hat, the thimble, or the boot, whether you'll land on Park Place or Baltic Avenue. This is the essence of the veil of ignorance, a philosophical concept proposed by John Rawls. In this scenario, you would likely create rules that are fair for all players, regardless of their starting position. You would ensure that even the player who lands on Baltic Avenue has a fighting chance against the one who lands on Park Place. This is the core of the veil of ignorance, making decisions without knowing where you stand in the societal pecking order. But why is this important? Well, it's a way to eliminate personal bias and societal influence. If you knew you were the top hat and had the best chance of winning, you might be tempted to skew the rules in your favor. But the veil of ignorance prevents this. It forces you to consider the perspectives of all players, not just your own. It's like designing a society from a neutral perspective, a perspective that is not tainted by personal interests or societal privilege. You have to consider what would be fair and just for everyone, not just for a select few. And this doesn't just apply to board games, it applies to real-life decisions too, from public policy to workplace rules. It encourages us to step outside our own shoes and into those of others, to consider how our decisions might affect the least fortunate among us. So next time you're faced with a decision, try donning the veil of ignorance. Ask yourself, if I didn't know where I stood in society, what decision would I make? You might just find that it leads to a fairer, more equitable outcome. In essence, the veil of ignorance encourages us to step into the shoes of the least fortunate before making decisions that affect society. You might wonder, can this concept be applied in real life? Well, let's delve into that, shall we? Consider the issue of taxation. If we were behind the veil of ignorance, not knowing whether we'd be rich or poor, we might design a tax system that is progressive, one that taxes the wealthy at a higher rate to support infrastructure, healthcare, and education for all. This way, even if we find ourselves in the lowest economic rung, we're assured of basic necessities. Or take climate change, a problem that affects us all but disproportionately impacts the poor. If we didn't know our position in society, we might be more inclined to endorse policies that mitigate environmental damage, such as reducing carbon emissions or investing in renewable energy. Not knowing if we'd be among the most affected, we'd want to ensure the Earth remains habitable for all. Now imagine if world leaders could use the veil of ignorance in matters of war and peace. Not knowing if they or their children would be soldiers or civilians, in the front lines or safe at home, might they be more inclined to exhaust all diplomatic channels before resorting to conflict? The concept also applies to social issues. For instance, if we didn't know our gender, race, or sexual orientation, we might be more inclined to support laws that protect against discrimination, ensure equal opportunities, and uphold human rights. After all, we could end up being part of any group. The veil of ignorance, therefore, compels us to think about society from a perspective of uncertainty, pushing us to consider fairness and justice as central to our decision-making. It's not just about protecting our interests, but about ensuring the well-being of all members of society, regardless of who they might be. As we can see, the veil of ignorance can indeed be a powerful tool in achieving a fairer and more just society. While the veil of ignorance seems ideal, like any theory, it has its critics. Some argue that it's impractical to expect people to make decisions without considering their personal circumstances. How can one realistically set aside their experiences, privileges, or disadvantages? It's a valid point, as our life experiences inevitably shape our perspectives. Furthermore, critics question the effectiveness of the concept. If everyone is hypothetically equal behind this veil, does it ignore the systemic inequalities that exist in our real world? Such a simplistic approach could potentially gloss over the complexities of societal issues. Others believe that the veil of ignorance, while noble in its intent, may lead to an overly cautious society. If we're always considering the worst-case scenario, could we become paralyzed by indecision, stifling progress and innovation? Despite these criticisms, the veil of ignorance remains a thought-provoking concept that encourages us to rethink our decision-making processes. It sparks a conversation about fairness and justice, pushing us to consider perspectives beyond our own. In conclusion, the veil of ignorance is more than just a philosophical concept. It's a powerful tool that challenges us to imagine a world where fairness and justice are not mere aspirations, but foundational principles. We dived into the depths of this idea, understanding its implications and how it can transform society if we allow it to guide our decisions. We saw how the veil of ignorance can be applied in real life, pushing us to set aside our personal biases and privileges to think about the common good. It's a call for empathy, a call for equality, a call for justice. Yet we also acknowledged its criticisms and counter-arguments, understanding that no concept is without its flaws. However, these critiques don't diminish the potential of the veil of ignorance. Rather, they enrich our understanding of it. So the next time you find yourself making a decision, remember John Rawls and the veil of ignorance. Perhaps it might just change the way you think.